Thank you.
Could I ask you to affirm your oath? You can remain seated while you do so.
Could I
Just read that out with your name included.
I, Karen Pym, do solemnly, sincerely, truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Could you first please state your name for the record?
Yeah, Karen Christine Pym.
Karen, I'm going to ask you first of all to just either move the microphone slightly towards you or to move yourself a little bit closer to it. Because I can hear that you're a little bit quiet, and I'll be told if I'm wrong.
Is that better?
I think it is. Thank you.
Okay.
Karen, you are the mother of Terence Joseph Pym, who died on the 26th of August 2016 when he was 30 years old. Yes?
Yeah.
And to check, you'd like me to refer to your son as TJ throughout your evidence?
Yes.
And to you as Karen?
Yeah.
By way of background, the inquiry sent to you and to your representatives a number of months ago a request for evidence under Rule 9, and you provided in response a witness statement that I think you have in front of you now. You have a copy of it there?
Yeah.
It's 39 pages long, and if you turn to the last page of it, please, to page 39, it's dated the 4th of June of this year, and that is the page where you've also signed, yes?
Yeah.
And made a statement of truth.
Yeah.
Are you happy sitting there now that this witness statement is accurate?
Yeah.
So, Karen, you know that that witness statement therefore stands as your evidence. All of it will be taken into account by the chair and by this inquiry. What you and I are going to do today is not go through it line by line, but take you through some of the key events and some of the key concerns that you have raised in relation to failings in the care and treatment of TJ.
Okay.
You also, I want to acknowledge, gave commemorative evidence about TJ in September 2024 when we were back in Chelmsford, and you gave a very full account about TJ as a person and his life and some of the events leading to his death.
Yeah.
For that reason, we won't go over those again today because the purpose of this is to talk about care and treatment.
Yeah.
So one of the first things you tell us is that you were not involved in some of the early stages of TJ becoming unwell. Is that right?
Yeah.
And what has happened is that you have now had access to some of his medical records, including his GP records, which have given you a picture of how TJ was across the period from sort of 2010 all the way through to August 2016.
That's correct, yeah.
But is it right that at the time, TJ didn't really share any of the details of how he was doing or what was happening for him?
No, he wasn't. He wasn't telling us, no.
You weren't what? I'm so sorry.
Sorry, he wasn't going through us. I think we knew once that he'd been to the doctors and that was it. In Dover Court. But, no, I didn't know when I read some of the stuff.
You didn't know until...
I didn't know he'd even registered with the GP when he moved in with a girlfriend.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is really important to note from your witness statement is that you tell us a number of times that one of the parts of TJ's character was that he often didn't share anything that he thought might upset you or your husband or your daughters. And you say also that he was a person who was quite life and soul of the party.
Yeah.
I think you say in one part that he had the gift of the gab.
Yeah, definitely.
And what that also meant was that he was very good, the way you put it in your witness statement, is that he was very good at masking the true picture when he was really struggling.
Yeah. He was a bit of a Billy liar as well. He used to tell lies and, he didn't mean nothing bad by it, but...
No, well, the impression I get, and you must tell me if this is wrong, is that in fact he was trying to protect you.
Yeah.
Rather than, those things that were untrue where he would say he was fine or not tell you or your husband how bad he was feeling were intended to protect you. And I think we'll come on to it, but actually in your mind it's very clear that became quite dangerous because he was so good at masking what was actually happening for him,
Yeah.
that he did that extremely well in front of clinicians and mental health professionals.
Yeah, definitely.
And as we'll come on to see, I think that is one of the reasons why, when you became aware that TJ was seriously unwell and needed psychiatric intervention, you made desperate efforts to be allowed to explain to clinicians that he was very good at masking in this way. Would it be fair for me to say that what you were trying to get across first and foremost was that what TJ said should not be taken at face value?
Yeah, I said he'd hoodwink him.
Yes.
And he did when he first come out from the first time at the lakes. He met me because I was there, and he said, "No, I told you, there's nothing wrong with me.
Did he?
It's just drink."
All right. We'll come to that. So the two really key events that I'd like to talk through with you first. We know from your witness statement, and I don't think we need to go through it, that having looked back at the GP records, in fact, TJ had been struggling with his mental health from around about 2010. And there had been a series of referrals, either to local services like Rethink, or to drug and alcohol services, principally alcohol services.
Yes.
Because during the period from about 2012 onwards, he did begin to struggle with alcohol use. Yes?
Yeah.
Karen, you must tell me if this is wrong, but I think it's your view that his struggles with alcohol came after he began to struggle with his mental health. Is that right?
Yeah, he liked a drink,
Yes.
social drink,
Yes.
whatever, but then it just got out of hand, and he
Yes.
didn't end up coming home sometimes, especially when he was working in London. It was a lot worse there.
Yeah, so that was in 2012.
You
I
talked
think.
about him masking things, but he sounds. You suggest that he was quite open about his drinking problem. Is that right?
Well, we know.
You obviously
Yeah, when he
you could see it.
Yeah, you can tell, can't you?
Did he acknowledge it though, that it was an issue?
Oh, I think he did in the end, but that in the end, when he knew he couldn't drink no more. He just laid in bed. He was so depressed, and he grew a big beard and silly things like that. I don't suppose he thought it was an issue. I don't think he did think the drink was an issue, to tell the truth, because he's a young boy working in London or wherever he was working at the time, and that's what they do.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
You told us in your witness statement about a period when he took a job in London where you and your husband feel that he did become increasingly reliant on alcohol, and the workplace that he was in at the time was one, there was quite a heavy culture of drinking and drugs, and that wasn't good for him.
No.
Thereafter, he came back to live with you in about March 2012, after he'd quit his job in London.
Yeah.
And what you say then is that from that period onwards, he began to have a low mood that sort of stayed, a depressed mood that didn't seem to lift.
Exactly, yeah.
And Karen, what you've set out really helpfully in the records is the number of visits he made to a GP, either to ask to be restarted on antidepressants or to ask for help.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you say, and you must tell me if I have it wrong, is that looking back on those records and in the lead up to TJ presenting as acutely in crisis in August 2016, you are surprised that the GP was not more proactive in following up, because... Go ahead. No,
Sorry,
you go
I was just
ahead.
going to say, because, from 2010, he'd been at our doctor's, I think. Then he'd registered at another one.
Yes.
But the doctors where we lived, first of all, never done anything or didn't follow anything up.
Yes.
I know it's up to you to take responsibility for what you're trying to find help for, but if you don't know you're ill,
Yes.
then you can't. So that's up to them to step in and follow
And
up.
help. Yes.
Like you would follow up someone who presented with a lump on their whatever.
Yes. Yes, I understand. If we come to the beginning of August 2016, you told us in your commemorative evidence, and you've set it out again in this witness statement, that there came a day on the 8th of August 2016 when one of your daughters received a call from TJ's girlfriend at the time to say that he was very drunk and at a railway station threatening suicide.
Yeah.
Railway staff brought TJ back to your daughter's home. From there, British Transport Police became involved. Paramedics attended. As I understand it, on that day, you spoke to police who called to tell you what was happening.
Yeah, I was on my way from Dovercourt to Romford.
Yes. And the way that ended up is that police detained TJ under Section 136 in order to carry out a 72-hour detention for assessment.
Yeah.
My understanding from your witness statement is that both you and your husband were incredibly relieved that had happened.
We all were, yeah.
Tell me why you were so relieved at that point that he had been taken in.
He wasn't eating, he was just going in himself. He looked terrible. He was a nice looking kid. But I said he got a big beard, like, and Terry said to him, shave that off, that's not you don't wear beards like that. He had no interest. In the end, he was just laying around doing nothing really. And we knew he needed help. And I think he knew he needed some help. That's why he'd been to the doctors. But
Yes.
I don't know, they didn't pick up on the right things, I suppose.
Who
It's
didn't
easy
pick
for
up
me,
on?
the doctors.
Yes, I see.
But then, if he don't tell the truth, how are they going to know?
Yes.
And I don't know what he said to the doctors. But
Of
I could
course.
see different things. Me and TJ were like that. So,
You were very close.
me and him were, yeah.
Yeah. Karen, I understand that first on that date, so we're on the 8th of August.
yeah.
Yes. TJ was taken to Goodmayes Hospital.
Yeah.
And you understood that he was going to be assessed there.
Yeah.
But actually, for reasons that are still not clear to you, an immediate transfer was made to the Harbour Suite at the Lakes.
Yeah.
Is it right that you still don't... So that no assessment took place at Goodmayes at all?
No, there's no paperwork that he ever attended there. And I
No.
think he must have got there about, I don't know, I'd be guessing, but he must have got there about perhaps 4
4 p.m.
3,
Yes, okay.
that time. And I'm pretty sure they transferred him at midnight without an assessment.
Yes. So he was transferred to the Lakes and...
Because
and,
he was out of area, not because he needed help.
Yes,
Somewhere else, they could have done their assessment. there.
because
I don't-
Goodmayes was out of area.
They said he's out of area. So
Yes.
I think I've got the understanding. I think they put him in a taxi. I don't know if anyone accompanied him. I've not seen that information. I
I
still
see.
don't know to this day.
Yes,
But that was my impression that I remember, and that was at midnight.
yes. And it's my
And this is
understanding...
after a kid has gone to the railway station
Yes,
to kill himself. Yeah.
yes.
Sorry.
You take your
So
time.
I'm trying.
There's nothing to apologise for. And Karen, like I said to you before, if you need to stop or you need us to have a break, you tell me, you interrupt me, you let me know.
Sorry. Can I just go and wipe my face?
Of course.
Of
Sorry.
course, of course.
I'll try.
Chair, I'm being advised that we might now ask you to rise just for 10 minutes for a pause. Chair, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Karen, as long as... I'm so sorry. As long as
Sorry.
you're ready, we'll go
Yeah,
on.
I'm
And you feel confident to tell me when you need another break.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
I'm going to bring you back to just after midnight on the 9th of August.
Yeah.
And I think it was at around about that time that you learned that TJ had been transferred to the Lakes. My understanding was that from that time onwards, you repeatedly phoned the Lakes. And you did that with the specific purpose of asking that whoever was going to assess TJ
Yeah.
be made aware that you wanted to speak to them.
Yeah. And I
And-
was in the building working.
Now, yes, you're a nurse.
Yeah.
And at the time, you were working in the next door building.
Yeah.
And you were due to be at work on the following day.
Yeah.
Well, look, actually, it's the same day
Yeah,
because we're at
yeah.
midnight on the 9th.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right.
So you started to phone after midnight and you repeatedly asked to speak to whichever clinician was going to be assessing TJ. You also explained what we've discussed,
Yeah,
that TJ would minimise his own symptoms and his own feelings and was likely to say, I'm all right.
Yeah, yeah.
As I understand it, before TJ even got to Goodmays and then to the Lakes, your daughter had also told both police and paramedics that they must warn whichever clinicians
Yeah.
TJ was being handed over to that he would do that.
Yeah, she knew as well, yeah.
Is this right? No one ever phoned you back from the Lakes?
Yeah, completely, never. We must have phoned about 10, 12 times.
You phoned 10 or 12
Yeah,
times?
Yeah. It was a harbour suite.
The Harbour
I
Suite?
remember it, yeah.
You remember the calls?
It was a lot of calls.
Of course. At one point, I understand that the member of staff you spoke to said something like, he's 30 years old.
Yes, that was the other thing, yeah. Yeah.
Now, you must tell me if I'm wrong, but from what you've told us and from your witness statement, I think the point you're making is that his age was irrelevant.
Yeah.
Because what you were trying to get across was that you desperately wanted to input some information for whoever was going to be carrying out that assessment. The next morning you went to work in the next door building to the Harbour Suite at the Lakes and you called again. And you were told that he was still waiting for an assessment.
Yeah.
You kept calling. He was still waiting for an assessment. And the next call that you got was from TJ to say, I've been assessed.
Yeah, yeah.
There's nothing wrong with me.
Yeah, yeah. And he was just waiting for me there for when I finished.
Yes. So he waited for you to finish
Yeah,
and you
because
went
I was
and
only,
collected him.
I think I was on a half day, so I finished between 12 and half 1.
Yes.
Half 12, sorry.
And he told you at the time that he'd been seen by a number of mental health professionals.
Yeah, but I don't think they was... I remember something that weren't the right ones, what he said were in the room. There was supposed to be a psychiatrist,
Yes.
but she was a locum,
Right.
and a psychiatric nurse,
Yes.
and a social worker, but I don't believe... I've not seen any evidence, but I don't think they were the people that were in that room that time.
No. But in any event, you didn't know it was taking place and you weren't asked to attend.
No.
Can I take it that you would have done?
Oh, God, yeah. Yeah, it's literally 200 yards from me in a
Yes.
different building, yeah.
Yes. And looking back on it, you've been able to see the clinical records that were made during that assessment at the Harbour Suite at the Lakes. If you want to follow it, you don't need to. But if you want to follow it, I'm looking
What
at...
page are you on?
I'm on page 11.
I've read them before, but I'm... Oh, yeah. Yes.
It's only if you want to follow, you don't need to. I'm on page 11 and I'm looking at paragraph 50 in the middle of the page.
Yeah.
So what the records tell you is that TJ was assessed by a consultant psychiatrist, a nurse, and a nurse who was an approved mental health professional. And TJ was recorded, I'll read it if that's all right, so that everyone is clear, as presenting as forthcoming and insightful, who made plain that he is not mentally ill, and TJ's presenting problems were assessed as entirely alcohol-related. Can I put it in this way? The purpose of all of those calls you had made to the lakes was to avoid
To avoid
exactly
that, yeah.
that outcome.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes. No plans for follow-up of any kind were made.
No, but I thought, as I said to you about a social worker, there was a
Yes.
mention of a social worker and they're supposed to follow up and do things.
I see.
And he told me that they'd made an appointment for a community psychiatric nurse to visit.
I see. So a community team to come and visit.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear anything about that again?
No, but that is not a thing he could make up because he
I
wouldn't
understand.
know about community teams working in
So
the
it was
community, mental health teams.
Yes.
He wouldn't know, so
No.
it must have been said to him that
Yes.
was going to happen.
So it was TJ that told you that?
He told me that, yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
Can
As-
I go back?
of course.
Can I just go back to the time you telephoned to say you wanted to
Yeah.
speak to the clinicians? Did you make it plain to them that you were working next door and could come and talk to them? Do you
I don't
remember?
think there was any messages passed on. I think they just was appeasing me.
Did you say that though to
Yeah,
whoever it was you
yeah,
spoke?
They knew I was there, yeah.
You said
I said
that.
I'm working there because he was transferred like 12 o'clock and I was on shift that morning, so he was still there.
Yes,
So, yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, they knew, 100%. And it was the same person answering all the time because they don't have so many staff, and I don't think overnight.
Thank you.
That's all right.
Thank you. One of the things you had said, as I understand it, on those calls and that you were very clear about in your own mind is that what TJ would say when he was assessed
Yeah.
was that the problems were to do with his drinking and he would reduce his alcohol intake. And then there we have that exactly reflected in the records. You were quite right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what he did.
Yeah.
There may have been some discussion about a referral to a community team. As far as you are aware, did any such home visit ever take place?
No.
No. What I pick up from your witness statement, Karen, is that you feel very strongly, and again, you must tell me if I have this wrong, that if you had been able to give some information to the assessing clinicians about the background and the history of TJ's expressions of suicidal intent and how low he had been, and if you'd been able to explain how he would present, it is your feeling that he wouldn't have been discharged at that time.
I wouldn't have let him come out the building, so, but I couldn't get in the building, so I never had the choice.
Yes.
Simple as that, yeah. I couldn't believe it when he come out and met me after work. I just still couldn't get over it.
Yes.
And I knew there was something wrong, but he would, yeah, spoke his way out of it again.
Forgive me.
That's all right.
When he came out and you took him home, or he wanted to go to his girlfriend's, I think, but my question is, as far as you can remember, were you given any kind of information about how to keep TJ safe,
No.
where to go next for help,
No.
what to do?
No. I think he might have gone to one Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, but I never knew that. I think I read it somewhere,
Yes,
but I'm not sure if that's true.
I understand.
I don't know if it's something he said.
But on the day, there was no engagement at all with you from staff at the lakes or
No.
anyone who had been involved in that assessment
no.
about what should take place next or any kind
No,
of
I
plan?
never see him again till the coroners, the people that were involved up there. That,
You didn't see those
The
people again
inquest.
until inquest?
no, I'd never met him before anyway, but that was when I saw him.
I understand. I understand. There doesn't seem to have been then, and it may be to do with the way in which TJ presented when he was assessed, but that's exactly what you were trying to warn of. And one of the things you tell us in your witness statement was that what was so shocking and upsetting to you is that there doesn't appear to have been any kind of exploration of what might underlie the way in which he had presented. He had been at a train station talking about suicide just that day.
Yeah.
And to you, I think, is this right? It feels that as though that was just sort of dismissed.
No one, no, how can they let him?
Yes,
That's less than 24 hours, roughly, they've let him out.
yes.
From being picked up at Romford, with British Transport Police, calling the paramedics, taking him to Goodmayes, and letting him out round about 12 o'clock the next day.
one of the
It's
things
too much.
you have learned is that the paperwork that was completed for that assessment at the Lakes included a section for information from the nearest relative,
Yeah.
which was,
Blank.
of course, left blank.
Mm.
Now, Karen,
So why is that there?
yes, go ahead.
And that's not a juvenile place. That's adults.
It's
That's
for adults.
juveniles.
Yes,
So why have they got the same paperwork asking for family or friends' input?
yes.
So it must be something they should be doing. Well, they've got to do it.
Did you say it must be something they should be doing?
They should be, shouldn't they? Yeah.
And I
Especially
think,
if you're ringing and asking to speak and say, you know, I need to speak to the doctor before he has his assessment like I did. And nothing.
yes.
Nothing. No.
In fact, I think that's one of the points you make, which is that even if in these particular circumstances, even if you had not been as proactive as you were and made those desperate attempts to speak to someone, that section of the form is there for a reason,
Yeah.
and the views of a nearest relative, if available, should
Yeah.
at least be sought.
Before they let him out, yeah.
Yes. One of the other things I want to take you to is that at a much later stage, there was a civil claim against the trust in respect of the circumstances of TJ's death, and that involved a lot of detail around this assessment at the Lakes on the 9th. And Karen, if you want to follow it, I'm looking now at page 31 of your witness statement and paragraph 142.
Yeah.
You don't need to, but just so that you know where we're up to. In summary, the experts who were asked to analyse the way in which that assessment had been carried out
Yeah.
concluded that it had been inadequate on a number of fronts.
Yeah.
What one of those experts said was that there was no evidence to indicate that the assessing team had sought to establish anything about TJ's background or about the triggers to his acute presentation, and that the focus solely on his problems with alcohol led to an assessment that wasn't realistic,
No.
essentially.
Not at all, no.
If a better evaluation had taken place at the time, it was those experts' views that follow-up would have been offered at the very least, and some sort of psychiatric care plan.
Yeah, but all I think is that still he should have been sectioned there and then
Yes.
from the day before.
Yes,
You don't let someone out who's tried to jump in front of a train 24 hours later. There's got to be something wrong.
Yeah.
And he weren't drunk. So
yes,
he'd had a drink, but by the time he got to them 24 hours later,
yes.
he was sober, wasn't he?
He was sober, yes. Those experts, or at least one of them, was also very critical of the failure to engage with you about that
Yeah.
assessment.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. When TJ came home to you, as far as I understand it, in the period then before we see him presenting for psychiatric help again, which comes on the 25th of August, he remained very low in mood to the extent that you and your husband were desperate to seek help for him.
Yeah.
There had been an incident previous to this where TJ had been charged with an assault, and this was in relation to an altercation that took place with a girlfriend of his. You were actually a witness to that incident.
I was picking him up and picking his stuff up. And,
Yes.
it sounds wrong that he had a warrant out for his race, yeah, but for assault. But the assault was on the phone.
Yes,
He slammed the... She'd got a phone from work for him that day before, actually.
yes,
And she asked it back. And he says, is that all you want? He threw it on the floor.
yes.
But I did say to the police that there was a spars. We was outside, parked up front, like some little shops, and there was
Yes.
a camera. I said, why
Yes.
didn't you look at that?
Yes,
But to me, I still don't know what he was charged with, but it's assault. But it
Yes.
sounded wrong when it was put in the papers and everything. No one ever said it was assault of a phone.
I understand, and that
And
was
he
very...
never touched her. I was there. Yeah.
I understand that, and
He-
that was...
He'd never touched any person. No.
No.
He weren't that way.
No. I understand. So one of the things that had happened as a result of those charges, whatever they were, is that he had pleaded guilty and been sentenced to a community order, and also there were restrictions on his contact with that ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
But for our purposes, I think what's important is that he was, in fact, due to appear at the Magistrates' Court on the 23rd of August, and didn't attend court.
No.
So you and your husband tried to help him on that day. It was your view that he was scared about what was going to happen when he went to court.
Yeah, yeah.
And he wasn't well.
And he wasn't well. That's the main thing. And I bet he was thinking, well, what am I going to do in there if I'm not well?
Yes.
I mean, he was really ill. He looked terrible.
Yes.
He was such a nice-looking kid. He was sallow and grey looking, and
Yes.
it was awful. So I think we took him, didn't we, to Romford, give him the money
Yes.
for the train and some money for food to go to the because he wanted to go on his own.
To court.
But I think we got hoodwinked by him.
Yes.
I think that was his little plan, to go there and not go there.
I understand.
And he ended up drinking
Yes.
the money we gave him
Yes.
and coming back to where he was waiting, yeah.
I understand. And as a result of that failure to attend the court date, a warrant was issued.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Yes.
That's where it was stemmed from, yeah.
Yes. So on the 25th of August, Essex Police came to your home looking for him.
Yeah.
You explained that he wasn't there.
Yeah.
I understand that your husband spoke to police and said that you would bring TJ in. But also your husband explained that he was extremely worried.
Yeah, yeah.
Because between those dates, TJ had again been to a train station and talked about wanting to kill himself.
Yeah.
So that was explained to police by your husband on a call.
Yeah, definitely.
He was due to have a probation appointment on the 25th.
Yeah.
And you
At
drove
5
him...
o'clock, weren't it, I think?
Yes. And you drove him to that?
No, I didn't drive him there.
No, you didn't.
No, I didn't.
I'm so sorry.
Sorry, no, where are you? Did I drive him? No.
No, you didn't. You're quite right. I'm so
Someone else
sorry.
took him.
The late appointment on... You're quite right. That's my mistake.
Sorry.
Don't apologise for my mistake. My goodness.
It's all right.
You're quite right. On the 25th of August, he had a later appointment in the evening at which he did attend.
Yes.
And the probation officer that TJ saw...
Yeah, because, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah,
Please go ahead.
I can't remember how he got there. I don't know if one of the girls took him or whatever.
doesn't
I can't
matter.
remember. But I know he had that probation appointment. I thought he'd gone to that.
Yes.
But, yeah, you carry on from there. But, go on, that was at 5 o'clock. But before that, he'd been playing up somewhere, doing something.
Yes.
And they said he'd...
When he got to his probation appointment, my understanding is that he was in severe distress.
Severe distress,
Explained to his probation officer that he had been to a car park and that he'd been thinking about jumping, and she was extremely concerned.
He said he'd done I call it like a reconnaissance mission of the car park opposite Colchester police station, yeah.
Yes. She was concerned enough about the way in which he was presenting and what he had told her that she suggested that he go to A&E.
Yeah, she took him with the lady she was working with that time.
Yes.
And that was about 5:30 in the car.
Yes. In the evening, yes.
Yeah.
So she was concerned enough that she went with him.
Yeah, she was concerned.
Yes. And they went together to A&E at Colchester General.
Yeah.
At the time, you didn't know about that. You got a call about it a little bit later.
Yeah.
So when you got there...
Must have been the probation officer must have called me.
Yeah,
I can't remember, sorry.
That's all right. You don't need to.
Yeah.
I'll run you through it.
Yeah.
Essentially, when you got there, they were all still in the waiting area of A&E.
Yeah.
And TJ had not yet been assessed. Is that right?
No, he'd been assessed, I think, hadn't he? I don't know.
All right, don't worry. I'll stop asking you, having said I'll run you through it.
He said he'd been in a little room and he was sitting outside, sitting in a wheelchair with the two of them still.
Yes, I'm so sorry. I think you came slightly after that. So he had
sorry.
been. It's my fault. Please don't apologise for my many mistakes.
No.
He had been seen by a triage nurse. He said that he had been drinking and he was breathalyzed.
Yeah.
And the first suggestion was that he stay overnight in order to be assessed again when he was sober,
Yeah.
because he was presenting in a state of psychiatric crisis.
Yeah, not drunk, because the lady who took him, both of them said they couldn't tell he'd had a drink.
Yes. He wasn't slurring his words. He
No,
wasn't.
and I don't know. I've tried, even that uptime, I've tried to look at the percentage of what they
Yes.
said. And it still don't make sense to me that she said he was drunk.
Yes.
And she couldn't assess him.
I understand. So she said she couldn't assess him for that reason. There was
Yeah.
some suggestion from that nurse
Yeah.
that he stay overnight. So
in
that
CDU.
Yes. Go ahead.
Which I have worked in, where I used to do agency shifts, extra shifts.
Tell us what CDU is.
I can't remember what it's something. Oh God! It had a nickname because
Yeah.
it's something. I used to call it something dispatch and whatever.
It's not a
But-
psychiatric unit, and it's not
No,
staffed by
no, but
mental
they
health
do-
nurses, is
That's
it?
no.
Right.
But they do put people in there
Yes.
that are drunk and need help, which is wrong.
Yes.
And if they kick off, they've got these burly security guards, and I've seen them
Yes.
mishandle people. So that weren't the place for him.
No. But in any event, it never came to that, because
No,
what
they-
happened was, and this is from your recollection,
Yeah.
there was a discussion about the fact that there was a warrant
Warrant
out for TJ's arrest.
Yeah, that come up after she said he could stay there. I
Yes,
think,
so
yeah.
that came up after she had suggested that he stay overnight. And I know, and we're going to come to it, that there's a big difference between what you recall about how that subject came up and what that nurse recalls about how that subject came up and what was done.
Yeah.
But sticking for now with your memory, as far as I understand it, your clear memory is that as soon as she learnt that there was a warrant out for TJ's arrest, the nurse essentially said, I can't
I
assess
can't
him.
assess him. We're not allowed to assess people with a warrant out for their arrest. So, go on, sorry.
Were those the words? Is that what you remember, that she said we're not allowed?
Something like that. I can't, what did she say? I can't,
It's all right. You don't need to remember the exact words. I'm just
no, I
interested.
think something about it, can't assess him because he's got a warrant out for his arrest, and that's when she just suggested
Yes.
that as he had a warrant out for his arrest, I take him to Clacton Police Station,
Yes.
and then he'd get seen by the duty, whatever they're called now,
The
duty
FME.
surgeon. FME, that's
yes.
it, yeah.
It's the forced medical examiner.
That's the one, yeah.
So it's your clear recollection that what she said was, I can't assess that. I
Yeah,
can't
take
assess him,
it
and I
any
can't go
further.
forward
Yeah, yeah. He's got a warrant
because
out
of the
for his
warrant.
arrest, yeah.
Yes.
And he needs to be seen by the police there. Take him there.
What was your reaction to that, Karen?
Well, that weren't going to happen, no.
No.
No, that ain't the place for him to go.
Yes.
That's like 36 hours later trying to kill himself. They want to stick him in a police cell.
Yes. Did you have feelings at the time about whether or not police custody, whether or not he was seen by a forced medical examiner,
no,
was
just
the
police
right place?
custody. It's not the right place.
Right.
No, it wasn't the right place.
Now, I understand that during the evidence at inquest, the nurse who had been carrying out that assessment and having the conversation with you, TJ, and TJ's probation officer,
Yeah.
seemed to suggest that it was your idea that he instead hand himself into police. And your evidence, I think, is that is categorically wrong.
Sorry, I can't even say the word. That's wrong.
Yes. Was it a plan that you or TJ or TJ's probation officer positively agreed to? Did any one of you say, yes, that's a good idea, we'll take him down to the police station instead?
I think I might have said that,
Right,
but not intending to take him. I took him home.
yes,
And then we was going to sort it out the next day.
yes. And again, I asked you this in relation to the assessment that took place at the Lakes on the 9th. You having been told to take him to the police station, other than that, were you or TJ or his probation officer given any kind of information about how to help him, how to keep him safe, given the way in which he was presenting at the time?
No,
All right.
not at all, no. But can I just say
Please
the
do.
next thing that
Please do.
I can't believe what they knew, that they never told me when I picked him up. Do you
Say that
now?
again.
Is that the right time to say it now?
Of course.
Yeah, so basically the worst thing ever that I can't get out of my head that's led to me having, I think, PTSD is that when I went to pick him up on the Thursday, the 25th, they both knew that he'd been up the car park. Sorry, I've got to look at you now. They've been up the car park on what I call a reconnaissance mission,
Yes.
and they never told me. The next day I've drove him... Sorry.
It's all right.
The
It's
next
all right.
day I've gone to work and said he's got an appointment with his probation officer,
Yes.
and so that was that. So I took him most of the way, and he said, no, it's all right, I'll walk. And I went to work. So I've basically dropped him off to his death to go to the car park. But 3 times he did try and go into the probation office, and she was busy. And then when I eventually got through to her, when I finished work, after 12, she said, he's been in 3 times. He even asked for a £5 to buy a T-shirt because he was hot, because he had a tracksuit on.
Yes.
And then he didn't go back.
Yes.
And I said, oh, perhaps he's gone over to the police station to hand himself in.
Yes.
So the probation officer, who was the same lady from before, said, I'll ring the police station and get back to you. And he hadn't handed himself in, which is directly next to the probation office, so he hadn't
Yes.
gone there. So
I understand.
well, we didn't know where he was, basically. She said, when he comes in, I'm sure he'll come back, I'll call you. So I've gone home, told Terry that we can't find him anywhere, or something like that, whatever it is. And he was with his dad somewhere. I went down and picked him up. I was in my uniform. I got my phone. It was unknown, and I never do an unknown phone call. I never
Yes.
normally answer it, but I did because I knew him was not around as my
Yeah.
son. And that was it. They said they was the police, and they said, we're at your house.
Yes.
Oh, and so he said, I wonder if he's had a fight and been injured or something like that.
Mm.
And in my gut, I thought, oh no, but he's gone under the train at the station at Colchester.
Mm.
And when we got there, I said, he's done it, and he's done it. And they said, yeah, I'm afraid so. And that was when we walked to the house.
Yes.
And I just,
Thank you.
yeah. So, they had their chances, but it
Yeah.
just didn't arise to him getting the chance to be assessed properly.
Yes. When you arrived at A&E on the 25th,
Yeah.
I think I just want to make sure that I have this really clear. The assessing nurse knew that TJ had been on what you called a reconnaissance mission to
Yeah.
a car park that day.
Yeah.
His probation officer
Yeah,
knew.
the probation officer told her,
Yes.
and
But you were not told.
I was not told.
So you left.
I think, whether I can't have forgot,
No.
and I can't even. She might have said something, the triage crisis team nurse, but this one should have done.
Yes.
The probation officer.
Yes.
She was really nice. TJ really liked her,
Yes.
and they got on well. But because he never kept appearing, he had to keep going to her.
Yes.
I was just so surprised, they never told me.
No.
I wouldn't have gone to work if they'd have told me that.
You wouldn't have gone to
I
work the
wouldn't
next
have
day.
gone to work, no. I'd called, I'd called an ambulance or something on the Friday
Yes.
with Terry and say, look, he's been up the car park on Thursday.
Yes.
Twice he's been to railway stations. Sorry, Terry's my husband. I didn't say, did I? He
That's
could have
all
been
right.
anyone. Couldn't he?
No, there's nothing to say sorry for. Karen, we do need to take a short pause. Chair, we do need to pause for a moment, just because, as you're aware, staff names, including those of junior staff, will generally be disclosed in the course of the inquiry, but individual staff members may apply at a later stage to have their names withheld. To allow staff time to decide whether or not they want to make that application, you've directed temporarily that their names be restricted. And I understand that a staff name has now been mentioned, which is completely understandable during the pressures of a hearing. But just to ensure that we maintain fairness at this stage, I need to draw your attention to it and just ask you to confirm to the room and those watching via the secure link that a restriction order is in place and that they must not repeat the name of any staff member which they've heard within this hearing. In the background, it will be arranged that the YouTube feed is paused and that reference is removed from that feed and from the published transcript.
Mr. Chairman, I confirm that I've made that restriction order and that restriction order applies.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
Sorry, I know where you was referring to now.
That's
I sort of
all
stopped
right.
myself, didn't I?
I have to
halfway
be
through.
honest, I didn't even notice, Karen, so I'm very grateful to the gentleman sitting beside me because I was listening to you. So please don't worry about it.
No.
It's very difficult not to do it, and it's
I won't do it again.
it's
promise.
you're already under pressure, so please don't worry about it. What I want to go on to, I think, what you say in your witness statement is that although you didn't know it when you left the hospital with TJ on the 25th of August 2016, the assessing member of staff knew and could see and was told that TJ was in an active state of suicidal crisis.
Yeah. That was what the probation officer obviously told her when she took him there.
Yes. And to you, and you tell me again if I'm summarising it wrongly, Karen, or in the wrong words, it was just utterly shocking and confusing that a nurse would say, there's a warrant out for his arrest, and therefore I'm going to step away and you must take him to the police.
Yeah.
This just made no sense to you.
No, not at all, no.
It seems that really what was being said to you is that involvement with the criminal justice system or with criminal proceedings somehow prevented TJ from being treated clinically. And what comes across very clearly in your witness statement is that it's very obvious to you which of those two things ought to be the priority, and that the one is not a barrier to the other. Is that fair?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
This series of events at Colchester A&E was also looked at by the two experts who were instructed in relation to the civil claim. And I just want to take you briefly to what they said. If you want to look at it, Karen, I'm looking at page 32. And at the very top of the page, and if it's all right with you, I'd like to read that section of this expert's report.
Yeah.
Both experts were highly critical of the decision to discharge TJ on the 25th of August in that way and for that reason. And what one of the experts says, explaining that was a wholly unreasonable decision, is this: we have here a situation where a man who has just been brought to the accident and emergency department because of fears for his safety is sent back into the community without any support and in an intoxicated state. I am of the opinion that there is no reasonable body of mental health nurses working in the same role who would have taken the decision to allow TJ to leave hospital. That's pretty powerful, isn't it? What the experts went on to say is that one of the most egregious aspects of that discharge was some sort of rigidity around sticking to some sort of protocol which really was non-existent.
It's not in the policies and procedures, I can assure you. No.
About saying that he couldn't be assisted because of the existence of a warrant.
Or intoxicated. It's like if you walked in with appendicitis, would they say, if you've been drinking, I can smell drink? It's like saying, go home, come back when you're sobered up.
Yes.
It's not a done thing, is it really?
Yes. And to you, this is just unfathomable.
No, that's what I can't get over it, no.
Yes, I understand. I'd like to take you now to some of what the nurse who assessed TJ on the 25th of August said in her evidence at inquest, which I think was a matter of it was particularly distressing to you. One of the things that I understand is that you were shocked and confused by that decision to discharge TJ at that stage, but that one of the things that was said in her oral evidence in front of the coroner at inquest was that she felt confident that TJ would keep himself safe because he had kept himself safe all day. What are your thoughts on that, or what were your thoughts on that at the time?
She's not in the right job, is she, really?
Because, of course... Go ahead.
She's a senior as well, so...
Did you form a view about what was motivating her when she suggested that she would not be assessing TJ?
Did I... well, she'd had the chance to assess him, but there was no paperwork there again, was there? I don't think. Was there very little...
That's right.
A&E paperwork
Yes,
as well?
that's right.
Same as Goodmayes, the Lakes, and A&E in Colchester. Very little notes again. I don't know really. Perhaps it could have been personal things that have gone on in her life that may have affected her judgment.
So she said nothing to give you any understanding of what was really behind.
She was very harsh. Let me put it that, hard and harsh. That's how I describe her.
Thank you.
That's really helpful. The impression I have from your witness statement and from the information you've provided to us is that it was almost, as soon as that was mentioned, that there was a warrant, a sort of barrier came down, and now I'm stepping away and I can't assist you. And I think one of the things you say very clearly in your witness statement is that, especially given your own career as a nurse, that it is so clear to you that what should be the priority in all cases is clinical need and clinical presentation, and that's what was so shocking to you. But of course, at the time, you were also in the role of TJ's mother, and desperately trying to protect him
and protect him,
and get him safe.
Home,
Yes.
where we could look after him, not
Yes.
send him to Clacton Police Station.
Yes.
There's also one thing that I think sometimes I think she wanted to get off work as well at 8 o'clock.
I see.
I was trying to work out the times, which I can't, and I sort of remember, I know because the other one had to go, the probation officer had to go quite early because she had to pick her kids up by 8 for her husband to go work or something.
I see.
And I thought 8 o'clock, I bet they do 12-hour shifts.
I see.
bet I had I might be wrong, but I'm not silly. I think she thought, if I've got to do all the paperwork and that, I'm not going to get home till 10.
I understand.
It might have been. I'm not saying it is. It might have been. Time constraint, perhaps.
I understand. One of the other things I wanted to talk through with you a little bit, Karen, is the way in which you as a family were engaged with or not by staff in the round, so across both of the two incidents that we've been talking about on the 9th and the 25th of August. And we've talked through, I think, in some detail, the fact that there was just there was nothing at all. And actually you've put it so well in your witness statement. There's a section here where you say that one of the Rule 9 questions this inquiry put to you was whether you felt that you had been listened to. And what you say here is, in order to be listened to, it requires a person to have a conversation with you. And your point is that that never even got off the ground.
I mean, 30, isn't he?
Yes.
There's still, was that barrier there as well because of his age and me? But they never told me he'd been up. That's the thing, I can't understand it. He'd been up the day. That just still don't make sense, and will never.
Yes.
I'd like to ask them one day why they didn't tell me that day, but it's never going to happen.
I understand. One of the things, I think you saw the serious incident report that was carried out, that was produced by the Trust following TJ's death, and we'll talk a little bit about that. The word that you use in relation to it is whitewash. You see it as finding no particular criticism of any. There's no particular criticism of any kind of any of the events that you and I have just been through. And I think one of the things that you found particularly upsetting, I understand that in the report, talking about the assessment at the Lakes on the 9th of August, the nurse who carried out that assessment, when asked why there was no engagement with you, the answer given was that there was no legal obligation to engage with you. And to you, that is not a matter that should have been based on a legal obligation. You were desperately trying to provide information about your son.
It's not written in stone. We know that you've got that 18-year-old thing or 16-year-old thing, but it's not written in stone, is it, that you can't talk to the mothers of people that are seriously ill?
Of course not.
Or fathers, whatever.
And you as a nurse, and I think this also comes across in your witness statement, know that where someone is very unwell, one of the key routes to finding out more about that is through
the family,
their nearest relatives.
Or whoever brings them in unconscious. You've got to ask someone. You can't just say, because they won't have the records, they could be down like 200 miles away on holiday.
Yes.
So if someone brings them in and they're unconscious, what are you going to do?
Yes. In relation to that report, just coming back to that, forgive me. Yes, what you say here is that you consider that report to be a cover-up of errors and a whitewash. And I'm looking, Karen, if you want to have a look at it, you don't have to, at page 28 and paragraph 130. And there what we find sort of rehearsed, which is one of the major issues that, as we've discussed, was going wrong in the first place, is that in this investigation report, there's a focus on TJ's problems with alcohol. And to you, that's actually deeply insulting, because that's one of the problems with the assessments in the first place.
In the first place, yeah.
Yes. Karen, in terms of those two, the assessment at the Lakes on the 9th and the failure to assess, or the refusal to assess on the 25th of August 2016, is there anything else that you want to say about either of those incidents in terms of the impact on you as a family, or on TJ and what you think it meant for him? You've spoken a couple of times now about obvious missed opportunities.
Yeah. I don't know what to say, really.
Okay.
It's just, it's ruined. You think, we've got 2 girls that we don't see now. I've got 4 grandchildren, I don't see none of them.
Okay.
And this is none of our fault, but it don't bring families together. It tears them apart. So it's just me and Terry now.
Yes.
Living in a 1-bedroom flat, because we lost our house, 4-bedroom, a detached house. Now we're in a 1-bedroom flat, which I love anyway, it's better. And don't see the kids. And they're very touchy. You only have to say one thing wrong and don't agree with one of them, and you're finished. So they'll not see you for a year, 6 months. It's terrible.
I understand.
I don't know, they're just trying to get us, and I don't know, it ain't their fault. There you go.
Thank you. In general terms...
I don't know what else. I lost my way with the question.
That's all right. It probably wasn't a very well-phrased question. That would be the cause. I think in general, your feeling is that these were the most serious of failings and the most severe failures to assess properly at a time when actually he could have been assisted. Is that fair?
Yeah.
All right.
If I was there, if I was that triage mental health nurse, I'd have sectioned him there and then and walked him across the lakes.
Yes.
The other thing that they might have been, there was no beds, and then they might have had the trouble.
Yes.
You know, there's loads of things that I can think of
Yes.
that she must know.
Yes.
That might have thought, oh God, if there's no bed, what are we going to do with him then?
Yes.
But he's got a warrant. He's had a drink. I don't know what she was thinking.
And these things play on your mind, I think, as sort of possible explanation. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, all the time.
Yes.
Near enough 9 years later, I have nightmares about the car park. It's terrible.
Of course.
And the other thing that I have nightmares about is, did he suffer? Because I know a helicopter landed and they was working on him, so... And I have attempted to go through the ambulance and get a report, and then I back out of it because I don't know if I want to know.
Yes.
'Cause I know his injuries was severe. But for them to try and save his life, what did they do to him?
Yes.
A helicopter 50 yards away, I don't know.
Karen, I'm so sorry.
No, that's just... I'd like to know, but I won't know, because I think if I did that, that would make it a whole lot worse. I'm just thinking he was probably dead, but he had a pulse or something. Sorry, I shouldn't.
No, that's
I'm thinking
all right.
as a nurse.
You don't need to apologise. Of course you are. You're
Yeah.
thinking with your own professional
Well,
experience
I don't need to. No,
behind
sorry.
you. How are you doing? We could either take a very short break now, if you would like a few minutes, and then we're going to come on to talk about your recommendations for change and the things that you would like to see action taken about. Do you want to take 5 or 10 minutes now, or are you happy to
If
go
it's
on?
not going to take long, I'll carry on.
Of course,
Yeah.
it's up to you. All right, so it might help you to look at these, but you don't need to. Again, we can talk through them. I'm now looking, Karen, at page 38 of your witness statement. And I'm looking at the very first paragraph there, which is paragraph 154.
Yeah.
And here you make the point that has been running through every single aspect of what we have discussed about TJ's care, which is that there has to be more involvement with the family in these situations.
Yeah. 100%, yeah.
You explain again that TJ was incredibly skilled at masking his struggles to protect other people, or because he was afraid, or whatever it was, as is so often the case. And very helpfully, I think, partly because of your professional experience, you also say here that what you would recommend is that if someone is having a mental health assessment, it should be standard practice, at least to have a meeting with family or nearest relatives or whoever it is before that person is discharged.
Yeah.
You also say that it is crucial for an appropriate plan to be in place so that there isn't any risk-relevant information missed, as in exactly what happened to you on the 25th of August when you drove away not knowing
What he'd been up to in the
the
day.
state that TJ had been in the day before. You also recommend that mental health trusts should have a standard protocol in place for how and at what stages they engage with family members.
Yep.
On that,
Yeah.
and given everything that we've been through, on that particular point, is there anything else that you want to add or that you want Baroness Lampard to hear?
What bit was that? Sorry.
So I'm so sorry, this is paragraph 154 at the top of 38, and this is where you're making your recommendations about how families should be involved in mental health care, and in particular at the assessment stage.
No, I think that covers...
I think it does.
Yeah.
I think it does, but I'm just checking. I don't need to feel that you've missed anything.
No, that's fine, thanks.
The next point that you make, and we've talked about this a little bit, is that you say very obviously that someone who happens to be subject to criminal proceedings should have exactly the same rights to be assessed and treated by clinicians as anyone else.
Walking in, yeah.
And the way it's expressed here, I mean, you've said that the nurse's belief that she couldn't assess on the basis of a warrant was entirely mistaken, but that what it shows is that there's some kind of fundamental misunderstanding as to what the priority is for a clinician who is presented with a young man in psychiatric crisis.
Yeah. I mean, is that part of their training? Do they know about it? I don't know.
Right.
I don't even know if that's in... Are they trained? I don't know if they ever bring that up in their training.
You
I mean, she was
also,
an experienced one as well, the one that was there, so...
yes, you
You think
said.
she'd have known?
You do go on to say that you have concerns about staff training. And I'm looking at paragraph 157. of your, that's page 38.
Oh yeah.
When you
That-
say
that's
that-
just that's just part of my training that
That's
I've had.
very
It all
helpful.
started from COVID,
Yes,
and now it's just carried on. So you do your yearly assessments, 3 yearly assessments,
yes,
and all of it's done on a computer.
yes,
I've seen a lot of girls doing it at work. I think I've even done it myself when I was quiet. And when
yes,
someone gets stuck, someone else says, "Oh, I got stuck on that one. It's A."
yes,
You know, and it's and at the end you have to pass by 80%,
yes.
and then you just keep doing it till
And
you get
it's-
to 80%.
Of course you
above.
do,
It's
and it
just
becomes
ridiculous.
repetitive
And
and...
no one pulls you up. If you keep getting 50s and 50s, they don't think to themselves, "Oh, they haven't really got it. They haven't really watched it." Because some of the videos are like 30 minutes long.
Yes.
Then you're asked questions on it.
Yes.
And that's,
So
on,
there's-
that's on everything.
Yes. So that kind of online training leads to, I think the way that you've put it is a lack of accountability around whether or not that training has really embedded and
Yeah,
whether people
yeah.
have really done it
No.
and really understood it
No, it's
in
honestly,
terms of
it's
actual
ridiculous.
practice,
Yeah.
day-to-day practice.
Yeah, it's stupid. And it's a yearly thing for some things, 3 yearly for other things, but
Mm.
it's just A, B, C.
Yes.
And comments, it always asks for comments, but no one does it.
Yes.
Give your reasoning why, it says. No one does it, you just click for the next question.
I see.
And no one's ever been pulled up about it.
Yes.
Because no one looks at it.
I understand.
See what I'm saying?
Because
It's
nobody's
just,
checking
it's
it.
It's just a data thing.
Yes.
Yeah, Karen's done this, Karen's done that, she got 80 there, 70 there.
So it's a tick box sort of
Yeah, yeah,
exercise
yeah,
rather than...
yeah.
So I think what you're saying is that there are some key areas and fundamental areas of clinical practice where training should be face-to-face
Classroom based, yeah.
and it should be done in a completely different way.
But what they'll say is they haven't got the staff to do that, to let them go off the ward.
I see.
So,
One of the other things that you say, and we're coming to the end of what you say about recommendations now,
yeah.
and I'm looking at the bottom of page 38 and then your last page on page 39.
yeah.
And here you talk about the reports that are issued by coroners
Yeah.
to prevent future deaths.
Yeah.
That did happen in TJ's
Yeah.
case, yes?
Yeah. Oh, big, yeah, it was a lot of things.
Yes. And the Prevention of Future Deaths letter that went to the trust received a response, and you make an important comment here about the response to that letter from the trust. So when the coroner wrote her Prevention of Future Deaths report, the trust came back, I'm just looking at paragraph 159, and said, "Please be assured that learning from Mr. Pym's death is being shared across all the new trusts to help prevent the same issues arising again." And Karen, you say there that to you that assurance was then and remains now an empty one.
Yeah, because it's still happening in the same trust. You look every week at the news in our place and there's always something, 1 week to 2 weeks, it's still e-put.
Yes. You have pointed out that you think there needs to be very substantial changes in terms of the monitoring of whether or not, when a coroner makes those kinds of recommendations,
Yeah.
they're actually implemented.
You know, the policies and procedures, are they changed? Should they give them a time? As I said, can I carry on? Because this was my brain thinking.
Please
Sorry.
carry on. I want you to carry on.
No, what I say is, you've got the CQC, yeah?
Yes?
So as a general nurse, we know they're coming, they come. Tidy up, do this, do that. They all get ready. It's all rubbish. They all make sure you're up to date with your training and blah, blah, blah.
Mm.
But with them, they're not worried about the other side, are they? They're not following up on, I think, the prevention of future deaths. Yeah, they send it to the trust, but the trusts aren't acting upon it. So I think the CQC should have a little section department to get, sorry, the people, I'm all hands. And
Go ahead.
I should have departments deal with the prevention of future deaths and follow up on it like they would and give, like that could bring them down to a negative score. They give them scores of good, blah, 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 blah. But you'd never hear with, I've never heard of a mental health hospital really being given standing. I don't know, they probably do, but I'm wrong. getting mixed up now. Sorry.
No, I don't think you are at all. And
No,
I
I
think
just
it's
think-
such an important
Yeah.
point. One of the things that you're saying is that given the time and money and the trauma for families that goes into the inquest process
Yeah.
and then into the coroner
And it's just...
writing
One
that
mess.
report to try and prevent future
Yes, that's
deaths, you feel very strongly that that's such a waste of a process if it's not then, if there's...
implemented.
Yes.
Exactly. And then that's when you're not going to get changes.
Yes,
'Cause,
I understand.
the NHS is funny anyway, and it's hard. Policies and procedures, though, you know, do they get changed? So, I don't know. Probably not.
As we've been talking through your evidence today, in terms of what you would like to see done differently and changes, is there anything else that you want to mention at this stage?
No, I don't think there is. I think that's
All right.
okay, yeah.
Karen, what we're going to do, I've come to the end of my questions
Yeah.
for you, and unless the chair has any questions for you now,
Yeah.
what we will do is that will conclude your evidence, and we'll take just a very short break to ensure that there are no other questions for you or that you don't think of something else you want to mention. But if there isn't anything, if there aren't any further questions or you've nothing else to mention, then I won't call you back.
No.
So I'm going to say that this concludes your evidence, but before you leave the witness box, I'm going to ask that the photograph you provided of TJ be put up on the screen,
Okay.
just so that everyone who's been listening
Yeah.
to your evidence can see again who we're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah. That was him. He was premature, wasn't he? £2.
£2? My goodness.
It's a long story. You don't want to hear it all. I had major surgery when I was first pregnant with him as well.
Did you? I do want to hear that longer story.
Can I take the opportunity to thank you very much
Thank
indeed for
you.
coming to give evidence. It's obviously not an easy process,
No,
and I hope you feel you've been able to
Help
tell us
future.
what you wanted to, and to be assured that we will take in account of what you've said.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Lovely, thank you. Lovely to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Miss Lee.
Good morning, Chair. We will now hear evidence from Mrs. Carden, who will be sworn in.
I, Janet Carden, swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Yes, thank you.
Take a deep breath. Well done.
Can you state your full name for the record, please?
Janet Marilyn Carden.
Mrs. Carden, you are giving evidence today about your brother, who was born on the 29th of September 1957 and died on the 17th of February 2015 at the age of 57, whilst under the care of North Essex Partnership University Trust. Is that right?
Yes.
I'll be referring to your brother as your brother, or W4, throughout these questions, as you have been granted a restriction order at your request in respect of his name. But as I understand it, you're happy for us to discuss personal details in relation to your brother's treatment and death, and understand that this is a public hearing.
Yeah.
And you'd like me to call you Mrs. Carden, is
Yes.
that right? By way of background, the inquiry sent a Rule 9 request for evidence to your legal representatives on the 19th of March this year, and in response to that request, you have provided a witness statement. You hopefully have a copy of that witness statement in front of you in the red binder. It's an 11-page statement. It's dated the 15th of May this year. If you could turn to the last page, please, page 11. We see there that you made a statement of truth and you signed your witness statement. Have you had an opportunity to read through that document recently?
I have.
And you're happy that it's accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
That witness statement, as you know, Mrs. Carden, will stand as your evidence to the inquiry. Although I'm going to ask you questions about the statement, we won't go through it line by line together, and I won't ask you to read it out word for word. But please be assured that the Chair and the inquiry team have read and considered the entire statement very carefully, and it will form part of the body of evidence upon which the inquiry will rely. I would also like to acknowledge that you have provided a commemorative and impact account in relation to your brother. However, that will remain private as per your request. The Chair has, of course, carefully considered that account, as have I, and we're grateful for it. I remind you I won't be asking you to name any individual staff members or experts, so please do not do so. Your evidence today will focus on your concerns in relation to your brother's care and treatment under the care of NET. If at any point you require a break, please do flag it to me. My intention is to take your evidence for about an hour and check in with you, see how we're going if you'd like to continue. You're clear in your witness statement that the dates and events that you've set out therein come from your knowledge, but also any documents that you might have seen after your brother died. Before we begin, I'd like to set out that brief timeline of your brother's involvement with Essex Mental Health Services. I'll summarise key dates taken from your statement. Please do stop me if you feel that I've summarised anything incorrectly. And please feel free to refer to your witness statement as you wish throughout my questions. I'll then move on to your concerns and ultimately recommendations for change for the future. As I understand it, according to your statement, your brother had a long-standing history of mental health problems since 2002. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
Notably, he was diagnosed with recurrent depressive disorder around about 2004, triggered by a brain aneurysm surgery in 2000. Is that right?
Yes.
You note that he had several hospital admissions in mental health units before he died on the 17th of February 2015. On the 7th of November 2014, you state that he was diagnosed with generalised anxiety disorder. Is that right?
Yes, I believe so.
Is it right that that was during an admission from the 7th to the 20th of November 2014 to Gallywood Ward at the Linden Centre?
Yes.
Do you know whether that was under section?
I know that it wasn't.
In December 2014, you state that he was readmitted to the Linden Centre as he reported he wanted to end his life. Was that an admission on the 24th of December to Finchingfield Ward at the Linden Centre?
Yes.
Are you aware whether that was under section?
I'm pretty sure it wasn't. He knew how ill he was.
Would you like to say any more about that? You say you knew how ill he was. Could you just explain a little to us what you mean by that?
He had struggled with his condition since 2002, and if he was feeling poorly, he would contact us and come and stay, sometimes for a few nights, sometimes for longer. And he made several attempts before, and he was very aware that his condition was dangerous.
Can you just explain to us a little how that links to whether or not he was under section?
I wasn't there, but my husband was, and he was knowledgeable in this field because he'd worked in a mental health trust for 9 years, and he came away and he said they would have sectioned him had he not been so compliant and so understanding of his illness. He was an intelligent man. He knew he was ill.
Are you suggesting, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but are you suggesting that he knew what to say in order not to be sectioned, but to remain informal?
He knew that if he was compliant and he accepted the offer to go into the ward, he knew that if he went in and he wasn't sectioned, he would be more free to come and go.
Thank you. Returning, if I may, to the timeline of events, you state in your witness statement that on the 20th of January 2015, he attempted to hang himself whilst he was still an inpatient at the Linden Centre. Is that right?
Yes.
And that he remained an inpatient there until discharged on the 2nd of February 2015.
Yes.
He was then readmitted 2 days later to
Yes.
Finchingfield Ward, back at the Linden Centre on the 4th of February 2015.
Yes.
On the 5th of February, the following day, he was prescribed recommencement of a drug that he had previously taken and advised that that could cause severe suicidal ideation for 14 days thereafter.
Yeah.
Is that right? You note that on the 6th of February 2015, he reported feeling suicidal to staff. Are you able to tell us a little more about that?
On the 6th
On the 6th of February, so the
6th
day after he recommenced the antidepressant medication that he'd previously been taking.
No, I don't think I can. I mean,
That's not a problem.
he was constantly telling us and them about the thoughts that were running through his head.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that they understood what he was saying or listened to it. They thought he was attention seeking. I mean, yeah.
Is that a view that he expressed with you at the time, or is that a view that you formed having read documentation that you now have?
It's a view that I've formed, and it was the view of my husband that the staff did not understand that he was not attention seeking. He was genuinely suicidal.
Thank you. You further state in your witness statement, and Mrs. Carden, I'm at paragraph 10, if you'd like to follow along, but you're not obliged to in any way, just so that you know where I am in your statement. Around the 6th or 7th of February, your brother texted you to say he wished he was dead, and your husband reported that to the staff at the Linden Centre, but that wasn't recorded anywhere. Is that right?
Yes.
On the 12th of February 2015, he was permitted to leave the ward unaccompanied to get tobacco, and he in fact went to Chelmsford.
Yes.
Is that right? That afternoon, on the 12th of February, he was on hourly observations, during which he self-harmed by scratching his arms.
Yeah.
Later that day, he was able to use a lighter to create a ligature. He stood on a weight-bearing 45-centimetre bin in the shower room and ligatured from the bathroom door. You state that CPR was commenced, but no treatment was effective, and sadly he died on the 17th of February 2015. Is that right?
I was told that CPR was commenced. Obviously we weren't there.
Thank you. Are you happy with that brief summary of the key chronology and events, and we can now
Yes.
turn to your concerns? Thank you. I'd like to ask you some questions first of all in relation to your concerns regarding your brother's repeated discharges.
Uh-huh.
So we know that your brother was discharged on the 20th of November, then readmitted on the 24th of December, then discharged on the 2nd of February and readmitted 2 days later. You ask in your witness statement why he was repeatedly discharged when he was clearly so severely mentally unwell. Have you ever been provided with a reason or explanation as to why he was repeatedly discharged in quick succession?
Not from the staff. He mentioned that the ward was busy. And at one point, he actually took another patient home with him for the weekend. In fact, I think maybe even 2. It didn't work out because he was too ill. He couldn't cope with having visitors at home.
So he took patients home with him to stay at his
He
home
took
because
at
the
least
ward was
at least
busy.
one, and I believe it was 2 to start with, patients home. To stay. He was incredibly friendly and generous man.
And on the last occasion where your brother was discharged, on the 2nd of February, can you recall, were you or your family involved in that decision to discharge him at all?
No,
Can you recall, were you invited to a discharge meeting or anything of that nature?
I don't recall it. My husband may have been, but I don't remember. Usually, we would just get either a visit from him or a text saying that he'd been discharged. And I have to say, it was incredibly worrying because, as well as the frequent times he was allowed to leave the ward for various things, these discharges really, I believe, got in the way of the staff getting to know him. Because a lot of the time during the day he wasn't there. It was kind of like a dormitory place.
Understood. Can you recall if you were provided with any information, explanation or reason as to why he was being discharged on the 2nd of February?
No.
Any information as to warning signs perhaps to look out for, what to do in the event of crisis?
No. My husband was an expert. We knew what to do if there was a crisis. In fact, we had stopped 3 previous attempts between us.
What was your husband's role specifically when he worked at the trust?
He was a hospital chap. He was in charge of the chaplaincy. So he was in charge of a team of chaplains who worked across the hospital, and I believe also at St George's at some point. So he spent a lot of time on wards,
Yes.
supporting staff and patients.
And do you know, on that occasion, again the 2nd of February, what plans were in place for treatment in the community and follow-up?
I believe he was given a contact name for the community mental health team, contact number. And we had that number as well, in case we were concerned. But I don't think that they'd been in touch with him before he panicked and asked to be back on the ward.
So turning to that then, the readmission on the 4th of February, can you tell us a little about the circumstances of that readmission? You say he panicked and asked to be readmitted.
Yeah, he just got very distressed and felt that he wasn't well. and that he needed to be looked after.
And so was it you that contacted a clinician to make them aware of that, or the crisis team? Can you recall?
I'm sorry, I don't
No,
remember.
that's okay. I'd like to ask you some questions about your brother's diagnosis, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
In your witness statement, at paragraph 4, you state that he was diagnosed with a generalised anxiety disorder during the admission in November 2014. You then go on at paragraph 5 to say that during the admission in December 2014, his diagnosis was mixed anxiety and depression with a background of a long history of severe recurrent depressive disorder.
Yes.
So is it your view that the diagnosis of generalised anxiety disorder was incorrect, that was a misdiagnosis?
I have done some reading, and the opinion seems to be that anxiety was a symptom of the severe recurrent depressive disorder, and not actually what was his condition, and that's an enormous problem, because anxiety and depression carries a very low rate of suicide, whereas recurrent depressive disorder carries a very high rate of suicide. So, you know, if the nursing staff were under the impression that he was in because of anxiety, that would explain their feeling that he wasn't a suicide risk, which was what came out at the inquest. Several of the nurses said we didn't think he would do that. I mean, that to us, that was crazy, because that was the only reason, after weeks living with us, that we asked for him to be admitted, because we could not watch him 24/7. So it was. It seems to have been a disparity between what the medical staff understood his condition to be and what the nursing staff understood his condition to be. Having said that, I think the person who was acting as consultant on the ward at that time was also under the impression that he was suffering from anxiety and depression. And many of conversations with that person were about his car, not about his thoughts, his feelings, what was going on in his life, the distress he was under.
So your view, based on the reading that you've done and the findings at the inquest, was that the correct diagnosis was severe recurrent depressive disorder with symptoms of anxiety?
Yes.
And you've just explained to us the impact that you feel that had in terms of the level of risk and the misapprehension that he was therefore lower risk. Is that right?
Yes. He was actually assessed as being at a low to moderate risk at some point during his stay, which was, to us, I mean, had we known, was crazy. Absolutely crazy.
I'd like to come on to the risk assessment process in a moment, if we can. May I touch on medication first?
Of course.
You state that at paragraph 6 of your witness statement, in your view, your brother wasn't treated correctly, in that he was not medicated according to his actual mental illness. Please, can you explain a little more about what you mean by that?
As I understand it, what happened was he had been on paroxetine for a long period of time. That had side effects that were not to his liking. And I think before he was admitted, in other words, probably before he came to stay with us, his medication had been changed by maybe a GP, I'm not sure. All these medications take time to have effect. So you are on them for weeks before anybody makes the decision that they are effective or not. And during his first admission, I don't know what the medication was, but it had been changed. It wasn't paroxetine. And then after that last admission on the 4th of February, he was put back onto paroxetine, which had always been effective for him. The problem with that drug is that it carries a very high rate of suicide during the first 2-week period, and possibly a bit longer. This because he'd been on that drug for a long time, for years, and of course my husband knew it as well. And they actually had a conversation about how the next 2 weeks were a period in which to be careful, and I think my husband used the phrase "stay in touch," so that we knew what his mental state was. However, as I understand it, the staff didn't increase his observation levels or take any particular care, or in any way seem to be aware that the 2 weeks from the start of that drug were going to be a danger period.
And I think
further on medication, I'd just like to say he was also prescribed something, I believe, to help him sleep on the PRN basis, which is the as required basis.
Yes.
He had many strategies.
We just pause for one moment. Chair, we're just pausing the live feed for a moment. As you'll be aware, there is a restriction order in place in respect of the deceased. So if we could perhaps remind everybody in the room that we cannot publish the name of the deceased, and I'll ask Mrs. Carden to restart her evidence at the beginning of that question.
And I will confirm that that restriction order is in place.
Thank you. Mrs. Codden, we were just talking about medication, and you referenced PRN medication. Would you like to tell us a little about that?
So, his strategy for sometimes dealing with difficult thoughts was lots of exercise. He would run for miles or cycle for miles, a big meal, and sleep. And that PRN obviously was crucial. Obviously on the ward, the exercise wasn't available. We took food in every day in addition to what was available, because it wasn't enough. And the PRN should have been given when he asked for it, but it wasn't. And that upset him, I have to say, because that was his prop. And had he been at home and had that medication, he would have been able to give it to himself. But because you're on a ward, it's under the control of the staff. And the staff would say things like, yes, in the next medical round, or, the next medicine round.
Was that during his final admission from the 4th of February onwards, or are you referring to his admissions generally?
I'm referring it generally.
You further explain at paragraph 6 of your witness statement that you pursued a clinical negligence case against the trust, and 2 experts were critical of the care your brother received. You also state you might like the opportunity to provide a supplementary statement in relation to those reports once consent has been obtained from those experts. So I won't ask you any questions specifically about those reports today.
Okay.
However, turning to discuss risk assessments, and we've already alluded to this a little in your evidence, it's very clear that when your brother was readmitted to the Linden Centre on the 4th of February, he was recorded as low to moderate risk of suicide. You ask in your witness statement how someone with a history of self-harm and suicide attempts could be noted as low to moderate risk. Is it right, therefore, that in your view he should have been considered as high risk for those reasons, and also the one that you've alluded to earlier, which is the fact that he'd restarted that medication with a known increased risk?
Definitely. I mean, that was the only reason we ended his stay with us and got him into hospital. Because we knew that we could not watch him 24/7. It needed professional staff.
Can you recall, were you as a family asked to provide any thoughts or information to assist with any risk assessment process that went on when he was admitted on that occasion?
No, not at all.
When you refer there in paragraph 9 to the history of self-harm and suicide attempts, are you referring there obviously to the fact that he'd been admitted for the 3rd time in 3 months on the 4th of February, and also the ligature incident that you refer to on the 20th of January 2015?
Yes, and also the long-term history. I mean,
Yes.
the first attempt was way back in 2002.
On the incident of the 20th of January, you say in your statement that your brother attempted to hang himself whilst he was an inpatient. We have the serious incident report, you've referred to it at the end of your statement, and I think it's right, isn't it, that it wasn't recorded on the Datix system, that incident?
I believe not, no.
You state in your witness statement at paragraph 9 that your brother told staff he was feeling suicidal on the 6th of February. Now, you indicated earlier that you couldn't necessarily remember this occasion, so maybe there's nothing further you want to say on it. But is there anything you'd like to say about whether that was adequately considered as part of any risk assessment process?
What did happen at that time? He was a telephone engineer. He was in charge of, I forget what they called it, global communications for a big company, a big international company. So his phone was all important to him, and he would text us more than once a day sometimes. And we visited on an almost daily basis. So there was a lot of communication going backwards and forwards between us. But at that period, around the 6th or the 7th, he texted me and said, "I wish I was dead." My husband looked at that and said, "That's another level." It was on a completely different level to what he had texted or said in the previous weeks. And so to my husband, that was a big red flag, and he got on the phone to the ward to warn them.
And I'm not asking you to name any clinicians, but can you recall whether it was a receptionist, a nurse?
I don't know. My husband
No.
made the call. So it was somebody on the ward.
And to the best of your knowledge, that telephone call hasn't been recorded in documentation you've seen since your brother died?
It came out at the inquest that it wasn't recorded.
You've already touched on the failures in observations and how that links to the risk assessment process. But in your statement, you say very clearly that it was crucial for staff to keep a close eye on him from the 4th of February onwards, because in your view, he was high risk. But also, he started that medication on the 5th of February. And then we have the incident on the 6th or 7th where your
Yeah.
husband reported concerns. You query in your witness statement whether or not your brother was on hourly observations on the 12th of February, and if so, why was he permitted to leave the ward? The records indicate that he was on level 1 observations, is that right?
Yes, as I understand it.
Were you aware of that at the time, do you know?
I think we were aware that there wasn't much in the way of observations going on. I mean, if you visited him, staff were usually in the glass box halfway down the ward. In fact, one time I wanted to speak to a member of staff, and I had to wait for quite some time outside the glass box before anybody came to hear what I had to say. It felt a little bit like being the naughty girl at school.
Yes, you refer to it in your statement as feeling like a naughty child standing outside the office waiting to be spoken to. Is that right?
When someone actually did speak to you, were they receptive? Were they polite? Were they...
I think the word I would use is condescending. I'd gone in because frequently he would find that his bed had been changed. So if he went out to get tobacco, for example, which you can't get on the ward and you can't get on the hospital site, he would come back and find that his things had all been packed up and his bags were in the office. So this particular time, he rang me at about 5 o'clock and said, I don't know where I'm sleeping. Now, I think all of us know where we're going to sleep tonight, you know, and if you're not well, it's not a good thought to think that you don't know where you're going to be sleeping. And I know that his big worry was because the ward was busy, that he would be transferred to Harlow. There was a unit over at Harlow. Now, if that happened, he knew that our close support would be more difficult. And so, of course, that worried him. So I went into the ward to ask where he was sleeping, and the member of staff who responded was condescending and laughed at my concerns. And I had to literally explain, he's not well, he's in a distressed state, and he's upset that he doesn't know where he's sleeping tonight. One time he had to share a room with somebody else and there was no privacy curtain. Another time he got sent over to the Crystal Centre, which is the unit for older people. And after that experience, he rang me up and said, I can't wait to get old. And I said, what on earth do you mean? He said, it's lovely over there. The nights are quiet, the food is better, you get a better proper breakfast.
Was that the Ruby ward over on Crystal Centre?
I don't know which ward it was, but I know it was the Crystal Centre. Yeah, I can't wait to get old, if only.
And when you referred to not knowing where he was sleeping after returning from leave, did that happen on more than one occasion? Or was that just the once?
That's the one major one where he got very distressed about it. I know that several times he got back from a leave and his stuff had been packed up and he was in a different room.
Turning then to leave, while we're on this topic, obviously you query why your brother was allowed leave on the 12th of February when he was suffering from severe anxiety and suicidal thoughts. That period of leave was unsupervised, wasn't it? He didn't have a chaperone.
None of the leave was supervised. None of it was.
Were you as a family informed of that period of leave before it happened, do you know?
No. And I would say that it never got raised in the inquest or at any other point. But if you go into Chelmsford Town Centre on the 12th of February, you will find it full of pink hearts and balloons and stuff relating to relationships. That, I believe that was what so distressed him that afternoon.
And so, obviously, nobody asked for your views then on whether or not he should be permitted to have leave on the 12th of February, or indeed if you would like to accompany him.
No.
We know from the records that he went to get tobacco. I think there's an indication that he was going to Broomfield Hospital. There wasn't any tobacco in the hospital, and therefore he went to Chelmsford Town Centre.
Yeah, I know he went to Chelmsford Town Centre because of things that happened.
Do you know how long he was away from the ward during that period of leave? You referenced the morning.
Yeah, I don't. No, but I mean, if you haven't got a car, which he hadn't by then because we'd taken it away from him, it takes a little while to get into Chelmsford from the Linden Centre and back.
And so, presumably, you didn't know if he had a set time to return, and therefore whether he returned on time or
No,
what the
I
plan
don't
was.
think there was any arrangement like that made at all any time. In fact, one time I went, because he texted me asking for something, and I went to the ward and I got greeted at the door by somebody who said he's not here. And I said, he is here, I know he's here, because he sent me this text asking me to bring something in for him. And I had to get extremely firm in order to be let in. And what I said was, let me in and I'll show you where he is. So in we went to the main lounge. He was sitting right opposite the door, and I said, that's my brother. He'd already been in there for weeks, and that member of staff didn't even know who he was.
Again, I'm not asking you their name, but do you know what their role was, that staff
No.
member? Were they a nurse? Or
No.
You don't know?
No.
Your brother had other periods of leave during that final admission from the 4th of February, is that right? So on
From
on
the 4th of February?
On the 6th of February, the 8th of February and the 10th of February, he had periods of leave. Did you, if you didn't know that, that's...
I'm not sure about
I'm
that.
not sure. I think if it helps to prompt your memory, I think on the 8th of February, the period of leave was with your husband.
Possibly. Yeah. That would that have been a Sunday? Because he came home. He came to us
Yeah.
for Sunday lunch.
Okay.
So if that was a Sunday, that was
Yeah.
that visit, and that was when they had the conversation about being very careful this week.
Yeah. Because of the medication.
Yes.
Yeah. Were you aware at the time that your brother was declined leave on the 9th of February, the day
No.
after that?
No. No, but I wish it had happened more often.
I'm going to ask you now about your obvious concerns in relation to how your brother was able to obtain the items that he did in order to ligature. Are you happy to continue
Yeah.
with your evidence for the moment? You query how he got access to a lighter and how staff didn't notice that he had a lighter. Have you ever been provided with an explanation as to how he came to be in possession of it?
He gave us an explanation, which was they do search to see if you've got a lighter sometimes, but the thing to do is to have a few lighters. If they see you've got 3 or 4, they'll take 3 and leave you 1. I know.
So do you know whether he was searched on return to the ward
No, I
that day?
don't know.
Don't know. So you don't know if they confiscated any lighters from him on that occasion?
No.
Or any items?
No.
Do you know whether he was permitted to smoke on the ward, for example, in a garden?
Yeah, there was a little garden, and that had as I understand it, a post with a lighter in it. So the idea was that if you were a smoker, which, to be honest, nearly everybody on the ward was, because there was nothing else to do but go out into that garden and smoke. So there was a sort of post lighter. Hence, there shouldn't be a need to have a pocket lighter.
Yeah. And so your understanding, based on what your brother was telling you, is that he should have been searched when he was coming back to the ward?
Well, I believe that was the policy, and that
Yeah.
was the point of having a lighter in the garden,
Yeah.
that patients wouldn't have one.
At paragraph 14 of your witness statement, you query how and why he had access to a load-bearing bin. And you go on to state that during the inquest, you believe there was a discussion as to whether or not the bin was regulation compliant. And in fact, it came out that it was 45 centimetres tall and not 30 centimetres tall. Is that right?
That's correct. It was also incredibly strong. I think you could have stood 2 14-stone men on it. When we were taken into the ward and shown the bathroom, we didn't say anything at the time, but all 3 of us were shocked to see that bin by the door.
Was that some time after your brother had died?
Yes, it was.
That you went?
Yes, it was.
Do you know? Are you talking weeks, months? If you don't know,
more
that's
than
absolutely
a
fine.
week.
So more than a week later, the bin was still there. I'm going to ask you briefly about your concerns in relation to the serious incident investigation report that EPUT prepared.
Can I just go back to
Yes.
that bin? So I believe that bin probably was still there at the time of the inquest in October, because at the inquest in October, the chief executive was unaware that that bin was outside of the regulations. In fact, he asserted that the bin in the bathroom was, a regulation one. And I didn't say much at the inquest, but the one thing I did say was, can we have that bin in here? At which point, the whole jury gasped in horror.
So is it right that they did bring the bin and they
Yes.
measured it,
Yes.
and it was 45
Yes.
centimetres, not 30 centimetres,
Yes.
as the chief executive believed? Just turning to the serious incident investigation report, you state at paragraph 16 of your witness statement that it notes the incident type as a failure to prevent inpatient suicide. And you go on to explain that report states that your brother died on the 18th of February, when in fact he died the day before, on the 17th of February 2015.
Yeah.
Have you ever been provided with an explanation as to how his incorrect date of death came to be recorded in the serious incident report?
Well, I think we're probably all aware that their record keeping was poor.
You also received a letter from EPUT after your brother died, and you state that set out changes and improvements that had allegedly been put in place to ensure that nothing similar can occur again. And this is at paragraph 18 of your witness statement, if you'd like to have a look at it. I'm not going to go through everything there, but one of those improvements is that the search policy has been revised. Do you know how the search policy was revised following
No.
your brother's death? No. So you've
No.
never been provided with
No.
any information as to practically what that means?
No.
Another improvement is said to be that bathrooms remain unlocked at all times. When your brother ligated, had he locked the bathroom door, do you know?
I believe so. I think what they mean there, when they talk about bathrooms remained unlocked at all times, is because there is a policy on wards where they've got patients who are high suicide risks to keep the bathrooms locked, so that patients have to request that the bathroom, and then, because as I understand it, bathrooms are frequently used, and in fact had been in his plan always. If anybody had asked him what his plan was, it would have been what happened. So bathrooms are known to be a risk area, and if you've got high-risk patients on the ward, I think it's usual to keep the bathrooms locked and for patients to ask when they want to use it, whereas that wasn't the case on this ward.
And presumably then you're suggesting be supervised whilst using, given that they've had to ask for permission for the...
that they're constructed so that you can have the door open but draw a curtain across behind where the door is, so that a member of staff can stand outside and have some understanding of what's going on in the bathroom.
You set out in your witness statement on page 6, paragraphs 19 all the way through to 27, various things that you would like to ask the inquiry to investigate, mainly whether the changes that allege were put in place after your brother's death were actually implemented. Have you ever received any updates from EPUT as to whether the actions stated within that letter have actually been implemented?
No.
We've touched briefly on the inquest into your brother's death, but I just have a couple of questions for you in relation to that. You state in your witness statement that it was held on the 27th of October 2015, and the coroner concluded that as a result of insufficient communication, adequate precautions were not taken to minimise the risks to your brother.
Yeah.
You further state in your witness statement at paragraph 39 that it was evident to you that the CEO was not aware that the bin in the bathroom was not in accordance with regulation, and you've just described, in fact, the process by which you asked for that bin to be brought to the inquest for it to be made clear. You also state that the CEO, did nothing to put in alarmed doors, which had already been recommended. Can I just check, do you mean that alarm doors had been recommended prior to your brother's death?
Yes, I believe they were. Right. I believe there was a death about 6 months beforehand, and that was a recommendation that came out of that.
And are you saying it was acknowledged at the inquest that was a failure, that those measures hadn't been put in place?
I don't remember any acknowledgement, but I mean, clearly it was a failure.
To the best of your knowledge, was there an alarm in place in relation to the door that your brother used to ligature?
No, there wasn't. No, there wasn't.
Is it right that there was a jury at the inquest, or was
Yes.
it just the coroner jury? And you've touched on this earlier. You referred to staff saying, we never thought he would do that.
Right.
Again, I'm not asking you to name individual clinicians.
I couldn't.
But do you know, was it nursing staff saying that, consultant psychiatrists?
It was nursing staff saying
nursing
it.
Staff.
Yeah.
So the impression that you gleaned from the inquest was that the nursing staff thought that your brother would never follow through with his intentions.
And I think that's the lack of communication that the coroner referred to, is that there was no communication between perhaps medical staff, some of whom, but I don't believe all, knew what his condition really was, and the nursing staff who, frankly, didn't have a clue.
I'm going to ask you some questions about the ward environment. You have touched upon some concerns as we've gone through, so I won't repeat those. But you state in your witness statement that there was no noticeable therapeutic activity at all. Is that based on what you personally observed and what your brother was telling you?
Yes, there was. He went to one session, which was some sort of movement class, and he told us about this. So he went to this session, and whoever was leading the session clearly also had no idea how ill he was, and picked on him to start the movement. So I think it's this thing where, you know, one person makes a certain movement, everybody else in the room follows it. I'm not quite sure what the therapeutic use of that was. And he came and told us about it, and he laughed and he said, "She picked on me." And we said, "Okay, what happened?" He said, "I just burst into tears and went out."
Understood. You also make reference to an occasion where your brother did a jigsaw as a form of therapy, and then a staff member completed it while he took a break.
From the minute he was admitted, he started asking me for jigsaws, and I took them in on a regular basis when and this was one of his strategies. I mean, he had myriad strategies for coping with what his mind was doing to him. And one of them was get lost in a jigsaw. And yeah, I mean, that day he rang up crying. He'd left it partway done, and a member of staff had come along and finished it for him, which was not the point.
No. And so you found out about that incident because he telephoned you.
Yeah, he
and
told
informed
us,
you.
yeah.
You also state in your witness statement that there was a gym on the ward but no staff, so it couldn't be used, and you've alluded to the fact that actually your brother found running quite a useful form of therapy.
Yeah, it was a way to wear himself out and get to sleep. I never saw a gym, didn't know about a gym, but was told about this later. I don't know even if it's true. But if it is true, and it wasn't in operation because of lack of staff, that would fit with everything else, because the whole impression was we're not quite coping here. And certainly from our observation, and in particular my husband's, the level of staffing, training and knowledge and understanding was way too low. If he came home once and said, "Where is their sense of clinical excellence?" he did it a lot of times.
And sticking on the topic of staff for a moment, at paragraph 32 of your witness statement, you say that ward staff were hostile, and you've provided an example of another inpatient taking your brother's phone and the staff being uncaring and uninterested, and you explain how important it was to him to have his phone to be able to communicate with you.
Yeah.
Did you personally witness interactions of that nature, or was that impression based on things that your brother was telling you over the phone or in person?
Yeah, my husband and myself, we both felt that staff were unwelcoming, unwilling to engage with us, hostile. And I mean, it's sad to think about it now, but I think that probably meant that we avoided contact. And certainly, you know, there were visits where our interaction with him were interrupted by other patients who couldn't understand that we needed peace, and you know, staff did nothing about that. To be honest, of all the times I visited, my whole recollection is that the staff were in the glass box in the office, and that really puzzled me, because I've nursed, and I know that although in ancient history, when I was nursing, we had a glass box, it's not the thing anymore on wards in hospitals. There's a desk in the middle of the ward, and you know, things are managed openly and staff are out and about with patients. That wasn't the case on the Linden Centre.
So no one was milling around when you visited. It was always a case of if you wanted to speak to a member of staff, you had to go to that central hub, the glass box.
Absolutely.
And could you, obviously it's a glass box so you can see into it, what were the staff doing as far as you could see when you went to speak to them?
As far as I could see, sitting around chatting, and there was a big box of sweeties there, always. Quality Street, I think.
You make reference in your witness statement to staff not stopping troublesome patients, harassing your brother while you were present. Is that what you were just referring to, where patients would not realise you needed space?
Yes. And that no matter how often they chatted him up, he wasn't going to be their boyfriend.
At paragraph 35 of your witness statement, you state that on one occasion, staff saw your brother attempting to hang himself outside the office, and they interpreted that as in attention seeking, when in fact it was a cry for help. Was that the 20th of January 2015
yes,
incident?
I believe so.
And what brings you to the conclusion that they decided that was attention seeking? Was that something that came out at the inquest, did you say?
I think it did, yeah. I was quite shocked to hear that phrase used.
Do you know now what your brother's view was in relation to that incident and how staff treated him after it?
No.
No. Finally, on staff, at paragraph 39, you state that inappropriate staff were employed to work at EPUT, presumably because they were cheap to hire. Can you provide any examples of staff who you say it was inappropriate to hire? Again, I'm not asking you names.
Right. So there was a medical doctor who I looked up afterwards, and he was trained as a GP, who was acting as consultant psychiatrist on the ward. And he was the one who had with him. Sorry, oops.
It's okay. We'll just pause for one moment. Chair, we'll just need to remind everybody once again that there is a restriction order in place in relation to the name of the deceased, and therefore nobody is permitted to publish the name.
And I confirm that I have made that restriction order.
Thank you, Chair. Mrs. Carden, we've been going for about an hour. We're now going to turn to your recommendations for change. I've got about 15 minutes left with you. I'm completely in your hands as to whether you would like me to go through your recommendations for change now.
Yes.
Yes, or the other option is to have a break for lunch of an hour
yes.
and come back. You're happy to continue? Yeah. So, as I said, I'm going to ask you about your recommendations for change. What I'm going to do is ask for them to be put up on the screen. So the television screen in front of you will show them as well. I think we've been through, actually, most of them as we've gone through, but what I want to do is provide you with a final opportunity to say anything additional that you'd like to in relation to those recommendations. Amanda, please can we put up paragraph 40 on page 10 of Mrs. Carden's witness statement? Mrs. Carden, you say there every ward must have plenty of caring staff. Staff shortage impacts the care given to patients. Would you like to say anything further about staff shortages in relation to your brother's care?
It's not just about shortage, but it's about well-trained staff who understand. I mean, I'm going back to ancient history again, but when I was nursing, sometimes there would be a situation where a nurse would say to a doctor, this patient is displaying this symptom, you know, in other words, gently querying a diagnosis or a pattern of treatment. There was no sense in which that was ever going to happen on this ward, because staff just swallowed the attention-seeking, anxious person summary of him, and none of them properly got to listen to his life situation, to what was going on in his world, and the distressing time that he was going through. So, although there was some caring, it was in my mind, it was done by people of low training, healthcare assistants, rather than qualified psychiatric nurses. And with the best will in the world, you can't give good care to somebody without proper training.
Yes.
And the other thing is that I think the staff on the ward felt that they were short-staffed.
Mm-hmm.
And that was why they were so ready to let people have leave who weren't sectioned.
And you mentioned right at the outset of your evidence that you felt there was a shortage of beds, because you referenced a time where your brother took two patients home with him. So
it seemed that way.
So the combination.
And the other thing is the sending him over to the Crystal Centre.
Yes.
That would indicate there was something of an issue.
If we could please have the next paragraph, Amanda, paragraph 41. You state the ward should be small and there should be no office for staff to hide in. They should be interested in patient lives and respect input from family members. You've explained your concerns in relation to having to wait outside the glass office. You describe it like being a naughty school child. Is there anything further you'd like to say about either staff hiding in the office or not being interested in patient lives or respecting your input as a family?
Well, we had short conversations with several members of staff about my brother, and it was clear that they didn't know his life circumstances. They didn't know what was going on in his life at the time. I do not understand how you can help somebody with a mental health condition if you don't know what struggles they're having in the world outside the ward.
Thank you.
And, you know, there are some parts of that the patient may want to keep private, shall we say, or you could say
Yes.
cover up, but the family members will be able to give information on that.
Yes.
And I think there was a real lack of respect for family members. And of course, in our case, with my husband being so qualified in this area, that was very, very silly not to use his expertise, not to understand his level of understanding of the conditions.
And so did you feel that you didn't have that opportunity to put forward your views, but also when you did, they just weren't listened to?
Definitely. On one admission, when I went to the ward with him to be readmitted, there was the kind of admission interview. And there were things that I would have liked to tell the staff, but not in front of the patient.
Yes.
That was never an opportunity.
Thank you. Could we have the next paragraph, please, Amanda, paragraph 42? You state there, Mrs. Carden, the staff must ensure the environment is kept safe for people, depending on what is dangerous for each patient. For example, what can be problematic for one patient may not be for others. Understanding each and every patient properly is crucial. Does that feed into what you've just been saying
Yes.
about getting all the information available
Yes.
from all sources?
You can't help somebody with mental health problems without knowing them or spending time with them. And if you're constantly letting them either be discharged or have leave. It's never going to happen. I mean, it completely explains the situation where he'd been in there for weeks and the member of staff didn't know what he looked like or who he was, and was absolutely convinced and telling me he wasn't on the ward.
Thank you. Amanda, could we have the next paragraph, please? Paragraph 43. You state there, Mrs. Codden, staff must give medication as prescribed and be aware of critical information like medication changes, how this affects inpatients, bereavement, relationship problems. Again, that feeds into the discussion we've just been having, but also we refer back to the fact that the side effects of the medication, that increased risk for 14 days, weren't taken into consideration in your view. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. And finally, paragraph 44, please. You state there, good nutrition, quiet nights, therapeutic activities are all very important for an inpatient to be on the road to recovery. And in fact, you provided evidence earlier that your brother said that on Ruby Ward in the Crystal Centre, he actually found that those things were in place and his experience was much improved.
Not a piece of toast.
Yes.
I mean, we all know that good nutrition, a good night's sleep, is kind of crucial for good health, generally as well as mentally.
Yes. Thank you. Please, can we take down the statement, Amanda? Mrs. Codden, that concludes my questions for the moment. Chair, do you have any further questions?
No, I don't. Thank you very much, Ms. Lee.
Mrs. Codden, what we're going to do, we're going to take a 10-minute break to see if there's any further questions for you. If there aren't any further questions, we will release you and let you go, and that concludes your evidence.
Thank you.
Could I take this opportunity to say thank you very much for your evidence, very clearly given, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Chair, for those watching the live feed, if we don't return after the 10-minute break, we'll be returning at 2:30 with the witness who we're hearing from this afternoon, Patrick Brennan.
Thank you. 2:30, unless there are further questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Chair, Mrs. Codden has returned to the witness box, for which I'm grateful. There are 2 points that she, in fact, herself has raised that she would like to mention. The first is in relation to the term informal in relation to an admission, as opposed to sectioned or not sectioned. Mrs. Codden, what would you like to say about that?
I think it gives staff the wrong impression. If you are sectioned, they understand that you are seriously ill. But my brother wasn't sectioned. He agreed to go in, as we discussed earlier. And I know that the word informal is linked to that kind of patient. They're an informal patient. The word informal gives a completely false impression of how ill they might be.
Yes.
Even though they've agreed to go in, it doesn't mean that they're less ill.
Yes, thank you. And Mrs. Codden, the second thing you would like to raise is an incident of unprofessional staff behaviour. Would you like to tell us a little more about that?
We were shocked to hear from him that on the ward, someone was going amongst the staff, making collection before Christmas for their Christmas party. And he told us he was a really generous, kind and caring person. And he told us, I've contributed. So they allowed him to make a contribution to the staff Christmas party, which struck us as a completely unprofessional and incorrect thing to have allowed to happen. They had no idea of his financial situation, whether he could afford that or not. He was a mental health patient. You don't take money from mental health patients unless you know that it's for a good purpose, for a good reason. And it was just, staggered us that could happen on a place where they were supposed to be looking after him. And, to take money from somebody who you know is ill has always got to be wrong, whether you're a professional or not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, that concludes Mrs Carden's evidence. We will break now for an hour until 2:30, where we'll resume with our witness for the afternoon, Patrick Brennan.
A little less than an hour.
A little less than an hour.
Three-quarters of an hour. 2:30. Perfect. Thank you.